it's Chris, National Progressive. Okay, I'm really excited to have back with me Josh Cameron. He was my very, very, very first interview ever on this channel, and super excited that he is actually running against someone or not running against. It's going to be a vacant seat that Rob Bishop held. He was horrible. He was one of the people that really pushed the Bears Ears, the fracking on Native American lands, really fought against Native American sovereignty. He was just a horrible, horrible, horrible representative for this state. And so, very happy to have anyone who's halfway decent to run against him. And especially my very first interview, Josh Cameron. Would you please say hello and catch up on your story, because you are an activist, you're an anti-war veteran who was an activist, and you had some legal issues because you got arrested at a Mia Love and Mitt Romney fundraiser. And
Yeah.
please catch me up on that before we get started into anything else.
Sure. So they ended up dropping the charges. I made it pretty difficult for them not to walk away looking pretty ugly. They definitely walk away with mud on them. Arresting a veteran who is expressing his First Amendment right with to his representative at a rally of that representative, when that it should be at any time. Granted, I did it in a manner in which kind of was fair, but the manner in which that they retaliated was a little over the top, and ended up costing me $3,000. I was able to raise a GoFundMe, and got 2/3 of that back, which is freaking awesome. Like, the community support around activism actually at least enables people to be able to kind of take a stand in a certain, if not exactly, kind of field of dream strategy, where if you put yourself out there and you're honest and authentic, there are certain people who will respond to that and resonate on that frequency. And I seem to tap into some of that with my legal issues, which really helped me out and my family out. And I'm hoping to also use that as a bit of a springboard, and at least something to, again, underscore my authenticity, that regardless of where you agree with me on policy, at least like the type of person I am. I'm somebody willing to get arrested for my beliefs, and I will fight for them. I will use the rights that the Constitution affords me in order to stand up for myself. And I want to be able to enable the working class to be able to do that as well. CD1, as you may know, is an R plus 26 district. That's why it's really important for if a Democrat is actually going to be an insurgent candidate in that particular district, they're going to have a certain kind of working class value, and not really a traditional kind of woke. Like if I go in there and kind of mention what my pronouns are off the jump, they're probably going to close off and kind of make fun of me, even though they probably have similar things that they do. For whatever reason, that's just kind of a conversation stopper. I've worked in very conservative industries, so I kind of understand them. And by them, I kind of otherize, a whole group of Americans, which was unintended. But the point being is that I've worked in the Army, I've driven over the road as a truck driver, I've worked in factories in Indiana. I've been in a position where, I had the executive leadership of a factory tell all of the working class that they were not going to lose their jobs. They heard rumblings that the factory was going to close and move to Mexico. They assured us that we'd keep all of our jobs, and then less than 2 weeks later, they fired everyone and had a skeleton crew just to transition over to Mexico. So, like, I've been gaslighted from as early as 2004. Right, this is the musings of NAFTA that, and there's a lot of overlap with progressives and conservatives. And I hope to occupy that space, kind of that. If you think of a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the bottom three tiers, I think, are where progressives and conservatives most overlap. And that's kind of the space I want to occupy, and make sure that we have opportunities for ourselves, no matter how old we are. If we're 78 and we have the ability to, who knows, virtual reality coding, or, holography, programming. I mean, who knows at that point. But the point is, like, if you think that you have value to add to society, I'd like to see how I can tap into that And that's where like market-based thinking is a way to have a conversation with people who I think feel the same thing, that they don't want to feel like they age out of any sort of meaning in life. And I'm hoping to help that, as well as help the very young age into this idea that like I want to help you figure out how to best use your skills, not demand that you know what you're going to be when you grow up by the time you're like 7, like these unrealistic stupid standards.
Right. Okay. Well, so I really like that you're against, the NAFTA deals, and understand the people losing their jobs,
Yeah.
from getting the stuff shipped overseas, and then it just ends up shipping products back and forth. And one of my biggest issues is transportation of goods, because that ends up being one of the biggest polluters. Of course, war, as you know, is like a number one. U.S. military is so bad, for polluting. It's the number one polluter in the world. So, um, I'm sorry. This is an environmental channel, so I'm going to steer it a lot in that direction. But more
No, that's
importantly,
good. I think it's a great way to understand the industrial complex and get people united against it. The military industrial complex, rather.
right. But Rob Bishop specifically was horrible, um, as far as sovereign rights of Native Americans, and wanting to utilize that land for oil exploration and gas and everything, anything they can extract. And actually, he was a part of a a push to disappear the Native Americans. Basically, a part of a lawsuit that they were, well, in defense of a lawsuit, they were saying that the Native American reservation didn't exist anymore. Like, it was just gone, right? And this after years and years of the trying to assimilate the Native Americans through Christian schools, and then trying to adopt away all the children, taking them from their parents, and then all that. Anyway, he was a big part of that whole movement to try to just disappear Native Americans. What is your feeling on Native Americans?
Um, so like as a white person, like there's such a weird dynamic, especially like let me tell you in a nutshell. Like growing up in Utah, uh, it's amazing what spirituality will do to your belief structure. I talked to my brother who's 6 years my senior, and he tells me of stories where when he was a kid, he'd ask our father if we had any Native American blood in us, because you hear people talk about how spiritual they are and how connected to the earth they are because of that. And so he laughed in his face and said, "Of course not." Then, like 15 years later or something, or maybe it wasn't even that, 10 years later, Dances with Wolves comes out, and there's this hyper awareness of Native American spirituality. So then he starts believing that he actually is that. So like there is this weird dynamic where people want to believe in the spirituality, and I think that's a pretty beautiful thing. I think if you can do it in a way in which isn't culturally appropriating, and in a way in which actually helps out the actual tribes themselves. I have a industrial that I work for who goes out to the I believe it's the Skull Valley Goshute tribe quite often, and he
Yeah, that's
tests
near
like,
me. That's very
yeah,
close to me. Yeah.
okay, so yeah, so he tests out like their air quality, and because a lot of their heat source is from wood burning stoves, and we understand that burning wood creates particulate matter that ultimately is not all that great for your health. And so this is research that I'm involved in as well, at least as far as here in the city. But he gets involved over there, and he was telling me that there was a while back they were petitioning trying to use the mountains right there as effectively like a volt for like a breeder reactor, if I'm understanding that correctly. What a breeder reactor is when you have a nuclear reactor, you have these rods of uranium that once they're spent, for lack of a better word, they have to have a safe place to sit. And this breeder reactor provides a safe environment for them to sit for, I don't know, like 5 centuries or something, until they're a little bit less volatile. But they wanted to use their land and have make money off of doing something and handling dangerous material in a very safe manner. But there's a lot of lack of awareness of nuclear material, and so people get really upset when they find out that nuclear material is traveling through a neighborhood, whether it be through train or whatever. Which, rightly so, right? It's dangerous, but we need to make sure that we understand one, the real properties of these nuclear materials. Two, how we handle them safely. If we've invented them, we need to make sure that we handle them safely in the same way that when we have these wars that you and I are both against, you can't just immediately pull out. You can't just immediately just disregard uranium, right? You can't just immediately pull out of a war. There's got to be some sort of transition period, and handling them safely in a way in which, like, these people know that themselves better, like they know what they need better than I know what I need. So part of like what I hope to bring to Native Americans is really a town hall style listening, like, how do I help you, like, because I have this mixed understanding of what does it even mean as a white guy to believe like you are Native American than you aren't, right, of coming from my father's influence. And so, like, I don't even know where to begin to think what it is to be Native American in the sense of how I've grown up. And there's ways in which, like, I didn't even understand the nuclear argument and nor the Skull Valley go shoot argument about how they wanted to safely handle these dangerous materials until just very recently, just exposing the level of my ignorance for what they feel really could benefit them. So I shy away from saying how, like, I would make them, like, give them a better life. But I would like to have opportunities where I think free college would ultimately benefit them probably more, right? Because there's probably bigger barriers to entry to communities that are purposely impoverished, purposely put on terrible land, purposely kept that way in a manner which, through like the school system where it's often built off of property taxes. If you have an impoverished neighborhood, there's impoverished taxes, which pay for impoverished schools, which then lead to impoverished education standards. And it leads people in, systemic and generational poverty. Whereas opportunities where there's wealthy neighborhoods that have wealthy taxes, that pay for wealthy schools, that pay for a wealthy education, just inherently, causes people to network. And so I think that integrating the kind of equitable and kind of an equal opportunity and a hand up, to where I expect that when you go to college that you are a very active member within within the economic structure, societal structure. And I hope that people don't see Bernie Sanders as just a socialist trying to give out free stuff, but
Okay, I don't think anyone thinks that here, but I
yeah,
personally, okay, I'm going to interrupt you right now just
yep,
because
for sure.
I personally, at this point of time, I don't know if you've seen the report, the 11,000 scientists and all that. Um, we don't need any more growth. In fact, growth is going to be very destructive. So, I really didn't want to get into this part of it. I really didn't. I wanted to go into the, clean environment and not taking away Native American sovereignty because that's Rob Bishop's specialty. That was what he
Yeah,
did.
he's a terrible human
He was
being, and it's really based around corruption too, locally as
oh,
well.
lots of corruption, and it's like they're easy to exploit, so easy because of the federal lands and the ability to kind of integrate Native American lands with federal lands and Sitla lands and trade them out and it's just this really big scammy thing that only hurt the Native Americans.
Well,
You
and there's a real conversation about reparations going on right now. And if anyone deserves reparations, if any people deserves reparations, it's our native brothers and sisters that time and again we just disregard and throw away, and we cast into the worst of the worst land from to the best of our knowledge. Then we find out that there's oil and gas opportunities, and we try to steal it away again, poison their water like it's Standing Rock. And there's such a disgusting dismissiveness to the way that we treat these people. But I also caution that with America being a precedent, like a precedent based kind of judicial system, anytime that we allow the precedent to be made that somebody can be devalued, that basically sets the precedent for anyone and everyone to be devalued. You know, what
Mhm.
happens to a Native American also happens to an impoverished person running for their lives from our foreign policy from our southern border, and is now purposely being used as a political tool. You know, ports of entry closed down just to be, you know, kind of terrorist activity that we enact and that we execute upon impoverished people. And that's kind of the awareness that I hope, if nothing else, to bring to CD1, is this awareness that if we allow an extraction of of life, of value, of humanity, of from the working class, from any working class person, we're really extracting it all, right? And allowing anyone to fall victim to that. You know, I read, if you worked full time, our current standard of full time from the time Jesus was born, making roughly $2,000 an hour, you would have about $8.9 billion. Now consider that Jeff Bezos has like 100 billion. So 2,000 an hour, like what?
I
Like
know
even now,
that's nuts. That's
yeah,
nuts. I don't want
yeah,
to go down too many rabbit holes, but I
yeah,
really wanted to get into this topic. I want to know, Utah has a lot of military bases. We
yep,
have Hill Air Force Base, Tooele Army Depot, Dugway. We have
yep.
so many, Camp William. We have so many military
Yeah, I work
installations.
right next to Fort Douglas.
Okay, so having all of these military installations, how do you try to get the Republicans that are, uh, so patriotic, okay, to I don't know, to slow down on their military, like, um, not fight for a budget, a bigger, larger military budget. How do you do that? How do you convince the Republicans to get on your side, or are you for keeping all those military installations going crazy? I travel up north all the time and see those jet planes. It's every day. It's like nonstop jet
Right.
fighters flying over you constantly. That is horrible for the environment, not necessary. We have no enemies that are going to attack us. How
Right.
do you how do you fight against keeping that military budget exploding? I mean,
So that's a wonderful question. I don't know that I'm fully qualified to crack that nut. However, the the way that I try to approach it, I would think, is first understand the problem, right? Kind of the art of war is you have to you have to understand your enemy, and I think it's fair to say that the U.S. empire is definitely an enemy of mine, enemy of the world, enemy of humanity. And when I spent 4 years in the army, just as a medic, right? So I'm at a medic, and I have to qualify at the range, for instance. And if we bust into a bandolier of ammo, we could have shot one round. We have to burn through another 10,000 rounds or whatever. And there's a lot of this that's just it's hard to secure. It's hard to make sure that people didn't just get fistfuls of ammo. So there's a lot of waste built into the military system. And so, does that mean that we need to make bandoliers smaller? Maybe. But I think the point is that we need to look into where we can cut waste. One, that's something that we can immediately and bureaucratically and with a pen stroke immediately attack and immediately execute. And that's actually one of the beautiful things about the military is that they're built on a structure where they assess rules, and those rules are filtered down to be executed in a very prompt manner. And if they aren't, then there's going to be some form of reckoning. And that's why social experiments like integration even happened through the military before it even happened en masse throughout the rest of society. So I think this is a great way where we can look into how do we cut waste? How do we make sure that there isn't just some arbitrary number of hours that a pilot needs to have to make sure he doesn't get shot down by some nonsensical idea that you said that we're going to be attacked. And then understand how can we repurpose these people that have built these very real skills. And I think part of that hopefully what we can do is turn it into a little bit more of a Peace Corps operation, and maybe even have the military integrate into some form of um, federal jobs program, in the fact that like 3 hots and a cot actually isn't the worst thing for people. And then there's a certain amount of structure that can be good for some people. It gives you skills that you've never had before, and you need to have a certain skill set to be that valuable to a Peace Corps. I never really had a rifle discipline or real respect for weapons until I joined the military, and they really kind of pounded into me. So I think that I kind of understand that point of view, as well as I think that this is something that many people can benefit from. We have a lot of just people who think that if they own a gun, they can somehow protect themselves and their family, where statistics show owning a gun actually makes you far less secure. So how do I ameliorate these areas of opportunity where they lead to a worse outcome? And I think that administratively, immediately, finding those areas of waste and figure out how we can bureaucratically eliminate them in a way in which bureaucracy can be that pen that's mightier than the sword from day one. And then again, kind of that humanitarian, like if Bangladesh wants to join the first world's nations in the same way that we did and start with coal-fired power plants, well, we understand green energy to a pretty well degree. And if we can give them a hand up and get them connected to an energy structure and maybe get, I don't know, a 5% dividend back to us, whatever their GDP is, to where maybe it pays for itself within 20 years, but then we now have a secured trade partner for life. And so this is the foreign policy that we need to start bringing to the American democracy. And is this idea that we're interconnected. How do I give you a hand up so we can now be partners and help each other out? Which, if anyone like me who's a gamer has ever played a real-time strategy game, building trade partners is the key to success, period. And that's kind of played out here. And
I hate trade though. You're talking to the wrong person when you're talking about growth and trade and partners and 20 years
sure,
ahead,
fair
because
enough.
we understand, most people on this channel understand that we may not have 20 years. I mean, we got to get our shit together as far as the environment goes. Where are you on that? Where are you on the Bears Ears problem and exploiting nature for oil, and um, Trump blatantly stealing Syria's oil for, there's one thing, but I don't want trade. I think, where are you on trying to make localities more self-sufficient rather than trading? Because in the long run, that's probably not going to be an option. We need to get out of fossil fuels. So transportation is not probably a good thing. I don't know why I'm showing up twice.
We just lost.
Yeah,
We lost Josh. There he is. Hold on.
You're good. It's all good now.
yeah, I dropped out and then reconnected, and then
Oh, that's why. Okay, that makes sense.
okay.
That happens.
So as far as fossil fuels, I'd really like to transition away from fossil fuels. There's 10 times the amount of jobs out within, clean technology anyway. So as far as a jobs argument, like it lies in the green energy structure and energy infrastructure. And I think that there are ways where we can expand kind of the scientific coupling with the working class values. And what I'd really like to see is a mass production of graphene, if you're familiar with graphene. So it's a superconductor that effectively is the strongest material in the world, can be used to upgrade our infrastructure and help better support it, keep it from falling apart, as well as it can be used for even making your screen completely unbreakable on your smartphone. And
Okay, but where is that sourced from? Just
yep,
I'm
so this is a
I
it's a
don't know where
carbon
that's sourced
based,
from.
so it's a pure carbon based source. And the great thing about that is that there's an argument that needs to be had apparently about coal. We've decided that we need to talk about coal, whether you're against coal or for coal. And the problem with coal is that it gets turned into a gas, and that gas gets turned into carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide effectively allows light in, but then it reflects it back down to Earth when it tries to reflect back into space. And that's what causes extra heat and global warming, which effectively leads to climate change. Um, with that, though, if we could keep that coal in one, a solid form, and then two, not do mountaintop blasting, which pollutes and poisons the lungs of the poor working class folk that work in those mines. But if you can turn that pure carbon into graphene and keep it in a material form and not pollute the air with it, that's a great way to really kind of revitalize people who gave birth to our energy structure and really stick it to oil and gas, which have been the worst thing to visit our world. One, they're actually the real culprits that have put coal out of business, oil and gas, since the 20s. And then also, it's the reason why we go to war. Like if we're in Iraq and they have a coal mine, sure, we'll probably take the opportunity to go ahead and extract some coal, but we're never going to go to war for coal. But we absolutely will go to war for the petrodollar and go to war for oil. And so just transitioning away from fossil fuels alone would, one, we'd quit creating the very terrorists that we need to fight. Two, by quit creating the terrorists we need to fight, we wouldn't need as large of military in order to fight them. Three, having a kind of a downgraded military is going to help the environment again immediately, right? And so that with the bureaucratic pen stroke to cut waste, there are immediate things that we can do. Four, we can even end prohibition with drugs, do what Portugal did, and legalize tax, and then
Yes, thank you for talking about this. This is important to me. So please go into your policy on that.
Well, and by doing that, and I'm rambling, like I'm just gonna jump. So if you need to interject, just cut me off. But
I will. Don't worry.
and so Portugal, they legalize, they regulate, and they tax it in the same way that what Colorado does with marijuana, and what I guess Denver is going to be doing with psilocybin. Um, and so the point of that is that we hear a lot about there's cocaine or whatever spiked with fentanyl. So people are doing these hard drugs and they're dying. Like
Well,
that's
they're
because
getting whatever they can get on the streets,
yeah,
and
exactly,
that
exactly. And
makes it
so
worse. I'm sorry, my family was just really closely involved with that cartel incident in
oh my
Mexico.
gosh, I'm sorry.
Um, yeah, well, not kind of my daughter's boyfriend stuff anyway. Um, yeah, their family lives out there and that was their family anyway. That
Okay, well, if I get into any areas where are kind of insensitive, please let me know.
No, no, it's not
Okay.
insensitive. In fact, it's really important to me because
Yeah,
I think you could get rid of the cartel really easily
100%.
by decriminalizing all drugs and legalizing marijuana federally, completely, not just medical or whatever. Let people grow their own whatever. Um,
Well, and everything is interconnected, right? Everything. Where we create the cartels, though, so effectively, let me even
we've
take a
totally
step back
created
from
the
that.
cartel with the drug on wars
Yeah,
or
right,
war on drugs. Oh my God,
right,
that was fast
right. Drug
backwards.
on wars.
I'm
Well, I mean,
tired.
the the
You know,
the wars are on drugs, right?
mhm.
So that's something that George Carlin talked about. Like, we don't actually try to effectively do anything to fix problems. We just declare war on them.
Yeah,
Um,
like war on
and so,
poverty.
yeah,
Let's
right. But
arrest all the poor people and throw them in jail.
thank you, Kamala Harris. Right.
Yeah,
Also,
or ship them on a bus to another town, or
yeah,
yeah.
right. Or bomb them like in Philadelphia. And
I mean,
so,
it's ridiculous. And
but
Utah's
but
one of the
again,
worst states for stuff like that. It's like they're so ridiculous. They just want to hide all their problems under the carpet
of
and
course,
say they're doing such a great job. There was all this publicity that Utah got rid of homelessness. Remember that?
yeah. And so
That was such a
we did
farce.
a pretty good job. Now there's research that pretty solidifies that putting homeless people in houses,
Yeah,
it's
but
about
that
three
was a
times
very
cheaper.
short, small thing, and it
Yep,
worked for a
yep.
second, and they didn't take care of it all, and then it's just like gone, and
Well,
then now
and
they're
it's
arresting
about a third
people.
of the cost of leaving them on the streets,
Hmm.
whether it be between sanitation, because any human needs to
Yeah,
waste, and
yeah,
the idea that these people don't have a humane way to do very basic bodily necessary functions. That's a pretty terrible crime. And when you dig into the data, my friend blew me away. It showed me the St. Louis Fed actually reported that there are on the order of 17 million vacant houses owned by the banks. And so that's actually about a 30-to-1 difference
yeah. You
between
could house
vacant
every
houses
single homeless person right now
and
if there was the will
still
to do
have 29 more houses
it. Mhm.
per homeless person owned by the
Yeah,
banks. Like literally there's 30 and so like there's a system that's not working. We're not working class centered. And if you look up how, like, if you Google American economy, it'll actually break down that the standard way of looking at it is 70% is driven by the consumer and 30% is driven by the market. But right now we have a system where the market is kind of a rent seeking, where it's very much like we are a cup of coffee and then we have froth, which is the production that we create, the working class. That froth is on that coffee, and then they come in to that cappuccino and scrape that froth all off, all of that froth, all for them. They secure it, they silo it, and any sort of like dribbling or drizzling to the working class is only as a happenstance because it melted before I had a chance for them to scoop it off. And
Right.
and then they turn around and say, well, the only thing that I'm beholden to is my shareholders.
Mhm.
And then I hear arguments of, well, if we, if we tax the billionaires, what are we going to do? Who's going to occupy that space when they, tuck tail and run away from America? And I say eminent domain. I don't understand why this conversation isn't happening.
I don't understand.
Eminent domain's invoked when like, hey, we need to build a wall through your home. Go, you don't like it, go f yourself. Here's bottom dollar for your house. Oh, you don't like it? Oh, sorry, I'm already walking away. And
But the
so
thing
the
is, they're
idea
not
that,
going to run away from the U.S. marketplace.
no,
Period.
of
They
course
wouldn't
not, of
run away
course they're
from
not,
that. It
of
doesn't
course they're
matter how
not.
much they're taxed. They have the money to pay it, and they're not going to go away from the if. Okay, it's the consumers that drive it, but that's another argument that I'll get into because I'm so against consumerism because that's your power, people. Um, but anyway, sorry, but they're not. I'm sorry. It's the consumers that will drive the business, not how much money you put in the billionaires and millionaires' hands. It's
100%.
consumerism.
One person buying $100 million yacht just isn't going to stand up to 100 million people buying a single shirt. And then you turn around and have 100 million people buy a pair of pants, and then you turn around and you multiply that by four, right? And then as far as the amount of people that we have in this country rounded up, um, and so it's incredible that we've allowed ourselves to believe in this kind of farcical understanding that our betters are running the economy in a way in which is better than the way we can run it. I'd like to see how we can, in my idea of the graphene, coming back to the coal thing, I'd really like to see how we could turn the coal mines into a worker owned co op as well. There was a terrible travesty, I believe it was in Kentucky, where a coal mine owner just disregarded safety standards. People died. He went to prison and came out and was able to run for Senate in the United States. Was able to run for Senate. This murderer, this guy who doesn't care about the working class to the point that people die, no f's given, runs for Senate, and it's a pretty
What
gross
about the guy
system.
that ran the one in Price that where all those miners were trapped in
Yeah.
Price? Murray.
And
His last name was Murray. I don't remember his first name, but that was
because
in
we
Price, Utah, where they were all trapped. Price.
yeah,
Like,
that's not, and that's, and so I
he's
also,
still running free in the streets and doing his nasty bullshit.
yeah, right. And so this two-tier justice system thing really bums me out. And I'm talking a big game, of course. I have no ability to executively mandate anything that I'm talking about. This is
Yeah, you have
nothing
to
that I can
convince the
do.
rest of the bullshit artists and paid off
And
uh
or
bullshit
or
people.
all I have to do is convince the very conservative Utahns, R plus 26. I actually just uh,
Good luck
made
with
some
that.
donations. I made some donations to a place called Globus Relief through where I work. We have expired medical equipment. They take it to like Africa and Haiti and places where, say, the Clinton Foundation thought that they would actually help out, but extracted that same cost I talked about. But these
The
are actually
Clinton
people who help
Foundation
out. Yeah. So these are
helping in
people who
Haiti.
actually want to help out. Well, she was a very stark conservative. She went from, when I found out that she lived in was from New York, I immediately asked her thoughts on Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, with the caveat of, I am more than happy for you to disagree with me. I'd actually be happy to have an honest conversation with somebody who has a take that's different than mine, because I admire her quite a bit. And she went from being very skeptical of Alexandria and very skeptical of the means in which she was elected, and was under the impression that it was a small minority that elected her. Where I kind of went through the process of who Crowley really was, the smear merchant and the fourth strongest person in office, and she just really knocked on everyone's door, had a message. I kind of hope to have the same thing, the same type of message that reaches out to now my demographic. She's a wonderful, incredible minority woman who represents an area that has a strong minority population, and I'm a white white bread dude who is looking to represent a bunch of other white bread dudes. But I have a mentality that I feel, because of my travels, because of my experiences, extends beyond the typical white bread understanding. And I try to be humanity first. I wrote a book about it called Gaming Higher, Gaiming. Currently only ebook format, but just this idea of these billionaires that extract a cost from us, the working class, in much the same way like a zombie actually, when it bites you, extracts the humanity from you. And so I describe them as this undead billionaire class. And even on the cover of my book, I have a zombie face with a gentleman's
What,
chapeau and a monocle.
what's it called again?
So it's called Gaming Higher. So it's a play on words, and
Hmm.
it's effectively philosophy with kind of self-help and a political awareness, and my own struggles as like, where do I go from seeing standing rock and be like bile rising in my throat with having no idea how to stop it, no idea
That was
how to get
disgusting, wasn't it?
right, and
Yeah.
then Bernie inspiring me, putting fire in my belly, and
And then the
then Trump
Democrats
horrifying
cheating
me. Yes,
him
yep.
and destroying your every little ounce and fiber of your being. Sorry, that was me.
No, that's good. It didn't quite hit me that way, but you know what really
It did
traumatized me
me.
is that I I realized how insulated I was the day he was elected, because there was a woman in my office who mentioned maybe 8 times, just aloud, befuddled, that we elected a known sexual predator to the office of presidency. And while he's worse than that because he aids the famine in Yemen right now through clear emoluments violations through the Saudis. Like,
Not
this
just
is a
famine,
terrible
it's a
human being, but
genocide in
it's
Yemen.
total genocide. Yeah, but it's this family. Yeah, this,
And he also
well,
hates
it's a
the
genocide
Israelis
through
that
famine
are doing a genocide against the Palestinians. So
for
I mean,
sure.
I
Well, and
there's
that's why
that.
I'm gonna vote for the guy who sides with Cornel West. And Cornel West is somebody who kind of drives my own core philosophy, my own core trying to understand somebody. And he's also a wonderful example of how you can be a leftist and speak to right wingers and have them truly respect where you come from, because there's an authenticity that they can connect to, and that spirituality that often very traditional, whether it be Mormon, Catholic, Pentecostal, whatever, that authenticity often they mistake for spiritualism. But if you can connect in that authentic, sincere manner, you've really made a solid connection with somebody who will at least listen to what you have to say. And if it's somewhat reasonable, you've now earwormed them where they can't stop thinking about what you have to say. In the same way that the most dangerous thing Fox News could have ever done, they did by having a town hall with Bernie Sanders, giving him a long form platform for him to
That
show
was
how
pretty
reasonable
cool.
he
Yeah.
really was. Yeah. And so I hope to occupy the same space. I'm no Bernie Sanders, right? I'm a 39-year-old dude, but he's, I'm very much inspired by his passion, his philosophy, his um, pursuit of raising the standard for the human condition, and that's kind of what I want to bring to.
That is awesome. Okay, we're going to do questions in
Yep, let's do it.
a few minutes. So if you want to just get out anything else you want people to know about you. I have a really like world audience. I'm not kidding you. There's people from all over the world here. So I don't know how many people I actually have in Utah, but you're more than welcome to share this video with anyone. So put out anything you want. I mean, what do you want people to know? And hope I think you
So
froze.
you'll have to forgive me. My connection just hit a bit of an unstable. So I'm gonna look.
Ah, no. Okay. Where are you?
I'm
There
back.
he's back. Okay,
Yep.
hold on.
I
There's two of
apologize.
me right now, but Josh is back. There he is. Okay.
Yeah, the internet in my area is not the best. I
Yeah.
apologize. And so I'm sorry. May I ask you to repeat that last question?
I just want you to put out any last message you have. There you go
Okay.
again. Hopefully you didn't drop off again. Hopefully you
I can still hear you.
okay.
So uh, one thing that I would encourage anyone who's kind of in the same space where I was. So one, I would hope that I've encouraged you to go check out my book. here's my Dr. Phil moment. Have you read my book? But check out my book, Game Fire. I talk about this in a very real manner. Like, what do I do? How do I enact change? How do I work towards helping the end result that I'm aiming towards? And I play with video games that are very common and some that are a little esoteric, but that really illustrate points.
Uh-oh, where'd it go? Okay, I think Josh
again.
dropped. Wait.
So my internet.
He'll be back.
Really pooping.
He's coming back. Sorry, internet sucks in Utah. I don't know. I had to get a better plan. So sorry, guys. Let's just go through comments. Sandy asked what he's running for. First District Utah House Representative in Rob Bishop's old seat. Jean says free thinker. Yeah, we'll have equal power, but here it is. Because it's a bunch of nerds that like to share information. Oh, I love our people. Okay, do you play Go? What? And if so, what level? I don't know what he's talking about. First time? What the
Is
hell?
that Pokemon? Is that Go?
Maybe. I don't know. I have no idea. Val says, Josh, if you get elected as a Democrat, will you switch to environmental socialist like Senator Sanders?
Wait, Sanders is. You said Senator Sanders has turned into an environmental socialist?
I'm just asking I have.
Interesting. So I just want to make sure.
I don't think he's an environmental socialist. I think he's just a democratic socialist. But he runs. He goes to independent after elections. He goes back to independent. I don't know what.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Val. You have to clarify.
That's an interesting question.
Tough, quit.
Doggy, nice puppy. But as a democratic socialist, I believe in the principles of having a market be as a rudder to the economic engine, typically run by consumers. And I think a message that will play well with conservatives when it comes to environmentalism is that the idea that there should be people saying, I want to buy green energy, and then we laugh at them and not provide it for them, which is the point of a market, is pretty absurd, actually. And so there are real market arguments to be had about talking about if these people really want, and again, here's me otherizing people, these people really want to buy green energy, then let's provide it for them. And maybe we can even do it where tribal lands or sovereign nations, let's build solar farms, maybe, and have them sell it to the US, and maybe that's the reparation.
I'm not big on solar farms, I have to tell you.
Oh, really? I'm curious.
I'm not. I mean, I'm okay with people putting solar on their houses, on rooftops and stuff, but I don't want to take up any more biosphere than we've already taken. But I realize I am totally in the minority of people. But I'm really concerned about our biosphere. We've taken up so much land from other species that and taking up their habitat is really destroying our habitat, and there's just too many people. So, but taking up more habitat is just wrong. We can put it on our houses and learn to use with less energy to survive.
Well, I mean, there's a potential argument to be had of just doubling the amount of solar panels on people's houses, having a government-run program to do it, to then basically have people pay into a true, public utility, so it's very low cost and very affordable, and then have them feed back into a solar panel energy grid, then feed out to any other need, and then you're effectively using real estate that's already been developed and using rooftop that's already there in order to create your solar farm.
I'd rather them subsidize the solar, to already be utilized on rooftops than subsidizing fossil fuels. Ben Wilbur has a question. He wants to know how you feel about the Second Amendment.
Hey, great. Actually, I'd like some feedback on what you guys think. So I'm going to have a pretty non-traditional look, leftist. This really comes from my experience in the Army. And so again, here I am, 19-year-old punk kid, joined the Army, haven't really shot many guns, didn't really have a respect for guns. And then the Army really instilled an awareness, a respect, and they are kind of fun to shoot. But at the same time, like my
I have
experiences
to
with it,
get my.
oh, nice, good job, I like it.
I
Well,
made
and
my own holster. Okay,
that's
but
awesome. Um,
I don't shoot animals. I don't shoot living things. I mean, it's only for emergency. So
sure.
um, but
W- well, and like, but a combat weapon, right? So many conservatives feel like assault weapon, like assault isn't even a real term, and so we've got to understand where people are going to put up walls. So assault weapon to them is meaningless. So you got to start from combat weapon. And when I had an M16 before it was phased out for the M4, I believe.
leave that
Anyway,
comment up. Yeah, don't take that down. Okay. All right, sorry.
okay. No, you're fine. But it had to be in a locked arms room. And so the idea that we have untrained civilians with combat weapons when they're not in combat. And when I was trained for combat, I wasn't even able to walk around with a combat weapon. It was locked away in a garrison arms room. And so this is something that I think is absurd that we allow. If you feel that a handgun really makes you safe, I would like to one, I'd like to legalize marijuana. Again, I already talked about ending
Mhm.
prohibition,
Right,
um,
which I
and then
totally agree with.
I'd like to earmark funds there for range training to help people help rob people a true
Okay.
appreciation for the weapon that they have. Am I popping in and out?
Yeah, you were cutting out a little bit, but you
Yeah,
want range training so people like appreciate
yeah,
what they're having, so they don't just come like green with a gun and have it in their hand. And I mean, our permits that we get are kind of useless. I had a concealed carry permit, and you didn't even have to shoot the gun to get the permit, so it was
yeah.
kind of
You
ridiculous.
don't have to
Um,
shoot. So imagine somebody who's Johnny Bravoing to kill a bad
mhm.
guy, and then they shoot you in the ass because they don't know how to effectively
Yeah,
manage
there
this
should be
weapon that
there
has
should be
very severe
training.
consequences.
I'm totally
Yeah,
fine with having training for people who own guns. I would, if I had to do that in order to own a gun, I would totally do that. But the stuff they had for the concealed carry, which is supposed to be a step higher than just
yeah.
owning a gun, it was laughable. It was totally laughable. But Basil Peterson, we have to move on because there's probably gonna be a
Yep.
lot of
Sorry.
questions. So I'm sure you want to answer as many as possible. Do you believe that the commons should not be privatized? And I'm sorry if I don't
Does that
understand.
mean does that mean if that's like utilities like net neutrality?
I'm
I'm
pretty sure he's
absolutely
talking. Oh yeah, you were going to talk about net neutrality. That
yeah.
was one of your issues. So go ahead.
So I'm a huge fan of net neutrality. I even talk about it in my book. I use some language that some people may find slightly questionable. I try to be funny and I try to be real in my book. But plenty of people have played the game um, uh, Black Ops. Hold on just 1 second.
So, bro,
I have a child who is freaking out on me right
no,
now.
kids and dogs. What can you do? I
Yeah,
often get
yeah,
interrupted by a dog that wants to go potty out.
yeah. That's funny. And
Wow.
so
Oh, that's funny. Handguns
yeah,
don't make one safer. Hey, I'm not saying it's for safety because if I was in a panic situation, honestly, I wouldn't know what to do with it. I'm just saying emergency as far as if you have to put. Okay, I live in the country. There's large animals, there's other animals. If you can't get a vet and an animal is suffering, it's very important that you can put them out of their misery. Um, and I don't know. In the country, there's lots of reasons to have a handgun. Plus, I totally believe in the Second Amendment because it was put there for a reason. Um, and I believe in the actual reason it was put there, not the right wingy type. Really, I mean, they say it's to go against, have a citizens militia or whatever against the government. But when your government suppressing you, and if we are attacked by our government, or um, what do you say? How do I explain that? Okay, I am on a live stream now, honey. Thanks, love you.
well, and so that's actually a super interesting conversation to be had because there's a lot of people who feel that they have the right to amass weapons in case there's a tyrannical government, and they need to stand up and have a citizens uprising to stand against
Do you think
the
that's bad
tyrannical
though?
government.
That's
Well,
wrong. I
I
don't think we
don't.
could ever match the government's weapons at
No,
all.
no, we
There's
definitely never
no way.
match the government's weapons. The thought of it is slightly appealing to me. Like I can't. I mean, I've always been for the underdog. I can't help it. I get that some scientists hate that mentality, but I really like the idea of the kind of the underdog. So having an armed populace it definitely conforms to my confirmation bias. So that's a little dangerous for me. So I need to make sure that if I'm going to be honest about that, I need people who are going to question my beliefs on it. Um, but oh, see, I just lost my train of thought.
Oh
Um,
no, it's okay. I mean, it's just guns are really a touchy topic, and
oh,
being from Utah, it hasn't been
mm.
something that's been a trigger issue for me.
Well,
So
the
it's like
most interesting thing
I was
about
raised
people
with
with
them.
guns,
It doesn't bother me. I've always had them in around me, and it's never been a trigger issue. So I don't understand people that get so sensitive about them. I mean, you see all the tragedies, yeah, but it's not necessarily the gun. Um, it's probably more like the situation that puts people in that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I mean,
the biggest
yeah.
problem I have with people who amass guns to fight a tyrannical government is they're the first people to say, if you don't like it, you can just leave. To somebody like Colin Kaepernick
Oh,
who
well,
kneels
I
for
don't
a flag,
amass
and
guns
so
for one
that's
thing.
a dishonest actor. So not
That
you,
is the. I
right?
just showed you my only gun. I mean,
Sure,
that's
right.
it.
And so you're you seem like a responsible gun owner, and so like there's nothing wrong with that. But my problem is people who have who argue that they need to have assault weapons because they need
Oh,
to
people
stand
who.
up to a tyrannical government are the ones that'll tell me that if I don't like it, I can just leave. But if they
Yeah,
don't like it,
I,
they can perform an armed insurrection. And so
that
this is a
scares the hell out of
dishonest
me.
actor. Well, and that's
That
a dishonest actor that is hard for me to take serious. And I hope that I
yeah.
can also kind of disarm that argument and help elucidate how stupid it is. Hopefully,
Okay.
not in a
Yeah.
way in which makes them super angry. There was a
Right.
really interesting thing that popped up, and I might wade in the dangerous waters. But somebody had mentioned, I didn't see who it was, that they think that only women should run for office. That's a little
That's
too
stupid too.
shallow of a qualifier because
Yeah.
like Sarah Palin's a woman and so is Michelle Bachmann, and they
Yeah.
scare the hell
No.
out of me.
No. No. No.
Um,
No. No. We're not
yeah.
gonna go there. That's bullshit. Okay. Okay. Do we have any? What other questions are we missing? Do we have any more questions? I just want to get through the questions because we have like
Yep.
5 more minutes.
Sure.
I don't see any. If they want to ask him, a cue there is
Yeah.
very
Last
helpful.
call for questions, guys. So or comments is fine too. Um, I mean, seriously, the guns issue is really kind of a touchy one for a lot of people. But I want to just say that I really do believe there should be some um, regulations and all that on guns. And I'm totally fine with if they made a law that said you had to have some actual experience, some training to
Yeah,
own a
I'd
gun.
like that.
I
But I'd
think
like
that
to.
would be fabulous, but a lot of people aren't going to go for that. Not in this state.
Well, I want to make sure that it's not, not a law that's going to enact some sort of regressive tax that hurts the working
Yeah,
class.
yeah,
Somebody
we
who
don't want
feels that a gun makes them safe, and they obviously have a right to that, to that feeling and to own a gun. And so I don't want to then tax them into a place where they feel like their rights are infringed upon. In the same way that I was willing to get arrested for my First Amendment rights at the Mia Love rally, right? So these are people who feel strongly about things, and I need to be aware of that, while also
right.
trying
And you're
to
gonna have
communicate
to get ready
coaching.
to answer these questions here too, because you're running as a
Right.
Democrat in
Oh,
Utah.
and
Guns equal, I gotta read
100%.
something. Guns equal
Oh,
clean air and
what about
water from
impeachment?
poetry, yoga, and radical ecofeminists. That's awesome. I love it. Um, anyway, it's okay
Um,
if I think progressive political discord. Yeah, yeah. Go
so
ahead,
I'm for
Tanya. Go
impeachment,
ahead.
but I'm not for impeachment under the current circumstances. Like the idea that Trump is obviously a buffoon and then looks into dirt,
Oh,
trying
thank
to
you for
use it
that.
personally. So there's definitely questionable activity here. But then he
Yeah.
actually came up with real corruption. He showed that Joe Biden really
Oh,
was
he's definitely
corrupt,
corrupt.
and this is very accepted corruption within our government. and accepted corruption that we have people that, you know, their families, you know, make bank off of their name and get political influence when it's completely inappropriate for them.
Yeah.
But he should
Yeah,
be
the
impeached
Clintons were
over
great at
emoluments
that.
violations. And coming back to the intersectionality of green identity and kind of green ideology, you know, environmentalism. You know, he's getting hundreds of thousands of dollars funneled to him through his hotels from the Saudis. Turns around and sells them billions of dollars worth of arms that they turn around in a genocide against the Yemenis.
Yeah, there's
And
that. If they're going to impeach him, okay, that, or they could go on, the just recently taking the Syrians' oil, going against international and U.S. law to take another country, a sovereign country's oil. There's that. There's so many things. There's so many things, and they choose the stupidest thing ever that won't hold water.
To show,
I mean,
there's
not.
sorry, I'm sorry. I keep talking over you. There's a thing called Stapp's ironical paradox. If you look it up, it's amazing. It says that the universal aptitude for ineptitude makes any human accomplishment an incredible miracle. Did I just cut out there?
Oh, you're fine. No, you're fine.
Okay. So yeah, so the universal aptitude for ineptitude makes any human accomplishment an incredible miracle. And this really represents the Democratic leadership, where the area of impeachment that they want to investigate is the very area where Joe Biden was at some point number one in national polls, is now number 4. So they actually like hurt themselves. It's like if you play D&D, that, you know, here are the Democrats saying, haha, we're going to go ahead and show him, and then they roll a 1 and it's a critical fail. And instead of swinging and hit and like chopping off his arm, it swings back and like hits themselves in the shin. And so like the Democrats are just, it's obvious baked in controlled opposition, obvious baked in controlled opposition, and they don't want systemic change. There's more sunlight between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders and Nancy Pelosi, than there is between either of them and Donald Trump. And therein lies the scariest thing to them, are people who actually come out of the woodworks and come out of the shadows to try and represent on the human condition and policy that helps that, because then their power wanes. And we realize that we actually do have power and can fight this, you know, tyrannical system. Should gun owners have insurance for the liability risk? So that's an interesting question. I don't know enough about that question to really have a cogent response. I'd say that my immediate gut feeling is like yes, there should. I have a car. A car is a murder sled, right? If I hit you, you're done. And so if I have this murder sled of death that I have to have insurance, like, should there be some insurance, like, for the amount of guns we have? Even if insurance was only like $10 a year, it would add up quite a bit.
The last I read, Josh, is no insurance company will ever offer insurance on guns.
So that's an interesting point. Thanks for piping.
That is weird, but you think they would make a fortune on it, and because relative to the amount of guns in our country, which there's way more guns than there are people here, the risk is relatively low. So if it's like $1 per gun per year, the insurance companies could make a freaking fortune on that.
Well, and yeah, and again, I just don't want to be regressive in the way that we enact policy. That
I mean, and I think more regulations are worse. I'm kind of a minimalist that way. Like the same way I think that there shouldn't be different penalties for, say, drunk driving, reckless driving, things like that. It's like so stupid. Why do you have to have so many different things for the same problem? It's like one law, or texting and driving. Okay, why can't all that be encompassed in reckless driving, and quit having so many freaking laws where they can manipulate those laws, like even if you didn't actually cause the accident, but just because you were doing this. Oh my God, poetry. Really? No, I haven't. I why have I been asked that so many times lately? That's like boggling my mind.
I think it goes to show that people really are looking for those who have the ability to attract attention onto serious issues, to hopefully try and champion those issues in an area where we can affect change. Like, look at these people,
Yeah,
the
but I'm
solidarity
too
here. Like,
extreme for this state. Like, I'm so extreme for this state.
maybe not
I'm way more
locally.
extreme than you are, Josh. Like, way more extreme.
I mean, like,
So,
I don't think so. Like, I've learned to kind of taper my my language a bit, but like, I'm a guy who's been to in a 2 year period, 100
but they,
rallies
but
and protests. I got arrested. Like, I mean, arrested, screaming out at Mia Love to save
I,
babies from
I,
cages, and that's pretty
I love
extreme.
you for that. I love
Yeah,
you.
right. And so, like, I definitely tap into it, but I want to also frame myself as a serious actor, and that somebody who actually has thought about this. I'm not just somebody who's pissed off and wants to just throw a Molotov cocktail, but I've put deep critical thought into this, and I really follow deep critical thinkers. My Triforce, again, I'm a gamer. My Triforce within my soul that kind of guides me, and I don't necessarily have a North Star out of any of the 1 points, but it's a mix of Bernie Sanders, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and Cornel West. And so it's a matter of how do I help the current human condition to move into the future, uh, which is Neil deGrasse Tyson, do it in a way which doesn't extract an inhumane cost from the working class, um, or just the human condition, which is very Cornel West, and do it in a way in which, if I need to, I can chain myself to a victim of the system in the way that Bernie Sanders is, and just the sheer passion of these three people, and the drive and kind of the solidarity of just trying to help the human condition really inspires me, and those are who I try to summon in my best times, and I fall short often.
But you're amazing. I mean, you were my very, very first interview, and gosh, to have you on again is awesome. And find out you're running against Rob Bishop, who is one of my arch nemesis. I mean,
Yeah.
not against him, but for his seat.
Well,
Um,
and if you like what I said, go to Joshua for Change, FOR, change.com. Those are my issues there. Right now, it's pretty skeleton crew. And I'm trying to raise some money to be able to start hiring some full time staff. The kind of schedule of events are January is typically where people will file to the intent to collect signatures. Um, March is the filing period. June will be the primary, and here in Utah, we are joining Super Tuesday to say who our presidential nominee is going to be. And so we'll see how progressive Utah is going to see, potentially, a barometer of maybe how, where I'll be within the, come June. And
yeah,
it's
that'll
also going
be
to be up to
interesting.
me. Yeah, yeah. So I'm working on getting a listing tour done throughout the north and throughout the east.
So, what does the first district encompass in Utah? I'm pretty sure there's not a lot of people from Utah on this, but
Yeah. So
but just in case you
if
want to
you
take
look
a
at
clip
Utah,
from it and
sure.
post it. So,
So think of Utah, and Utah's like this weird rectangle with like a chunk taken out of it, and so that where that chunk is, and nearly all the take about halfway up, and all the way to the west is effectively CD1, and that's not exactly, but it's all of Kaysville. So if you're familiar with Utah, so Kaysville and
okay,
north,
so you're north. You're mostly
yep, and
north.
then
I
so
know
it
you're not
hugs
me. I'm
the
District 2, so that kind of
right.
sucks. I can't vote for you.
So it hugs the Idaho border. So it also goes up to Logan. So it hugs the Idaho border, hugs the Wyoming border, and hugs the Colorado border. And it gets as far east as Vernal and not really much further south than Vernal
Okay.
when it gets
If
that
you
far
get
east.
if you get this, you better take care of Vernal for me. But oh man.
Yeah, I used to work in Vernal. I worked in for Halliburton. I'm well aware of the boom bust economy and how that victimizes the very people who rely on
About the
fossil
air
fuels for
pollution that was
jobs, and then
so
also the air
bad.
pollution.
It was so bad. It was worse than 100 million cars, like the emissions of 100 million cars in a 30,000 people town. The pollution was just atrocious because of all the mining
Yep,
there.
there's well, oil and gas extraction.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not
that.
sure how much mining is done
Well,
there. There might be
that's
some,
what I'm
but
talking about. The mining is
yeah,
mining is oil and gas extraction, and there's also the phosphorus mines and stuff like that that's happening along the Flaming Gorge scenic byway, which is disgusting. I don't know if you've been up there lately, but they've destroyed it. It's horrible.
And I know we're kind of close on time. One thing I would like to come right back to, one of your first questions about our native brothers and sisters, is that currently in that area, in the Vernal area, the Utah state government actually leases land from the Ute tribe.
Mhm.
And we lease land to extract their wealth. Whereas I would love to have, whether it be solar farms, whether it be wind farms, whether it be thorium reactors, which are far safer than our current old anachronistic nuclear plants, whatever it is, I would like to see them on their land so that they actually get the wealth, so that they are benefited in a way in which, like, we really do owe a certain, you know,
The Ute tribe has been used and abused, and their land has been destroyed. And I don't know. I really I went and talked to them up there. Some of um, the activists up there, the Ute tribe members. Oh my God, you would not believe all the atrocities that have
um,
happened.
if I'm not mistaken, Carl Moore is Ute, is a Ute, a native person. Probably my favorite. I love Carl. I've gone out, stood side to side, hip to hip with that guy on many occasions, out protesting, and I try to be aware of, as best I can, as a white person who's kind of like not been raised to be aware, but at the same time not trying to be so pseudo woke where like everyone needs to make sure that what my pronouns are, or else the end of the world. Whereas like I'm anti-war. Like I'm not going to try and offend you. If you tell me your pronouns, I'm probably going to correct course and call you by them. But I
It was
don't
the
really.
Ute land protectors that I spoke with.
Yeah.
There's a gal, Kate, from the Ute land protectors that I met
Uh,
with up there in Vernon.
Many of them are also the air. I think the air protectors, Pandos as well. They're very much involved with a lot of the environmental awareness and going ons and Bears
Yeah,
Ears.
so go to
Oh,
Ute
and
Land Protectors. They have a Facebook page. Go check them out. By the way, they're really good. There's also Ute Pack, um, which is also an organization that stands up for the Ute Indian and Native Americans' rights. So go there, please. I mean, Graham Melwood even got one of their shirts for supporting them. Amazing cause because they really deserve our protection and people to stand up for them. Sorry, that's my spiel on the Ute tribe because near and dear to my heart. So
Graham is such a good dude. I like Graham a lot.
yeah, he is. I'm gonna go back on his show like soon. Within a month, I'm gonna go back on there to discuss my stuff that I do.
That's
So
awesome. Good for
watch
you. And
for
then
that.
one last thing too, like with speaking of tribal awareness, the Bears Ears, there's so much rampant corruption, and it stems from everything from Greg Hughes, who used to be our Speaker of the House, to Representative Mike Noel, who used to uh, govern over the Kanab area as a House representative, owned land in Grand Staircase, Escalante. When he was creating legislation to open it up to extraction, he didn't disclose his clear conflict of interest. I work as a medical research coordinator, and if I have a conflict of interest, I can't work on medical
There
studies.
was
Yet somehow
so
this guy
many
can craft
conflict of
legislation.
interest with
Yep.
Bears Ears and Grand
Yep.
Escalante. So many. I mean, I
Well, and now
covered
we're
it
doing
earlier.
he's doing the Lake Powell pipeline. He also owns land there. Greg Hughes owned land where the inland port is being built, but no one's talking about corruption. We're really talking about the environmental angle, which is very important to us, but
Well,
not really that
corruption's
important to
really
conservatives.
huge.
And so it's important to make sure conservatives hate
Corruption
corruption as
needs to
much as we
be
do.
in there. Well, the inland port. I mean, what bigger thing to bring up to the conservatives than the inland port and the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative connection?
Yeah.
That's like, look it up. There is a connection between the inland port that they want to build here, which is one of the things that I rant about on here. The inland port is connected with the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative that is going to destroy the planet faster. Just look it up. You will not be sorry because you can totally use that in your campaign, I think. So
So if you like what I've been saying, especially if you don't like corruption, I encourage you to write to the governor and talk about these issues. I actually,
Governor Gary Herbert, the most.
yep, I used ResistBot to help craft a letter and get it sent out to Governor Herbert, and then use that to create a letter to the editor, which I had the editor reach back out to me, so maybe it'll work. We'll see. But
What's your Facebook and what? How do they get a hold of you? How do they
so
support
I
you?
go to joshua4change.com, and that's how you can sign up. You can donate there. Even if you only have $2 a month, if you could even do like
What's it
a
called?
renew
Something for change.
Joshua.
Joshua.
Yep, Joshua for change. And
JoshuaForChange.com.
yep, .com. Yep.
Okay.
No,
JoshuaForChange.com, guys.
I'm the lead singer of the heavy metal band The Walls of Jericho. So Joshua and the Walls of Jericho, that's some fun imagery there. But yeah,
Cool.
help support me, make Gary Herbert very concerned about corruption, make it hard for Greg Hughes to run for governor, which he's trying to do. Bring up the corruption. Corruption is our angle to unite progressives and conservatives. And then that's going to give us the
Absolutely.
ability
That's been
to get legislation to help our environmental causes as well.
that has been my biggest ally when I'm talking to my family and trying to get them together on an issue, talking about the corruption. That's where everybody seems to have a little bit
Yep.
of a connection. So I think you're absolutely right in there. So last words, and then I'm going to say hi to everybody, and well, pretty much good night to everybody, because it is late and I
Yep.
have to work tomorrow, but I'm tired. I had a long day. I have to
Last words. Anyone who is thinking about running for office, if you decide that you want to run for office, a very clear way to get your name out is to see if anyone has reported about that office. I did a Google search on Rob Bishop bouncing. I found a reporter from the Standard Examiner, which reports in Weber County, and I saw that they wrote about Jamie Cheeks, who's also running for this district, and I reached out to him and mentioned that I was running, and he immediately was interested because he wrote about it. And
That
so
was
these are
pretty cool.
ways, these are ways where you can get your name out. And I encourage you to communicate in ways in which it's obvious that you disposition yourself as somebody who's different. Like one thing that he quoted from my website, actually maybe even in my email, it says Joshua is tired of the lesser evil strategy in politics. Voting for the lesser evil ensures that both the greater and lesser evil both inevitably become more evil. This is why he is seeking to represent humanity and human interests in an effort to displace corporate interests, he said in a statement. Though running as a Democrat, he is an unaffiliated voter occupying the quote the space outside of the political parties. And so I am an unaffiliated voter, much like Bernie Sanders did in nonpartisan legislation to help people, than I am about helping Team Blue. Though I will use Team Blue and structures in place because they're there, people. I don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat if I help you, or independent or otherwise.
Yeah, I read that right before. That's awesome. I so appreciate you, Josh. Thank you so much for coming on again.
Of
Let's see.
course.
Oh, humans here. Mr. Red came in late. Mr. Red. I'm sorry, it's not Mr. Red. It's MR Red, which to me that says Mr. Red, but okay.
The
Sandy.
red, MR red, the MR red. Yeah.
Yeah, can you see the comment?
No.
Let's see. Tanya, thank you for coming. Poetry, thank you so much for coming and sharing information. Zox, always nice to have you. Andre P. Voting for a progressive is just as evil. No, it's not, Andre. Really? You're weird. I don't understand. Moose Gal, yes. Candil, Torstein, Rowan, I'm sorry, Ronwin Demora. I'm hoping I say your name right. Human, thank you for coming. Jean, always love to have you here. Snort Mitchell, thank you for coming as always. Would you say, in addition to gold, silver, copper, and coal, the following minerals also provided to significance in mining in Utah? Beryllium, Clay,
That's
gilsonite,
concern.
gypsum, lead, limestone, magnesium, vanadium, and zinc. Mitchell's
And
our
gravel pits
educator.
too.
Oh, gravel
Yeah,
pits are
gravel pits
popping up
also
everywhere.
provide. Yeah.
Can
Yep.
you drive 10 miles without seeing a gravel pit nowadays?
Yep.
You can't. They're popping up everywhere. Like one day
Yeah.
there won't be one, and the next day there's a new gravel pit. Just bam, because of all the new roads. Did you hear that news? Okay, Utah person. That news report saying that now construction has to happen 24/7 all year round because we don't have, or because the growth is so much in Utah. I don't know. That pissed me off. I'm like,
That's
really?
insane.
Yeah, so they get to go all winter long. They're not stopping because they can't keep up with the population growth. They just keep building the roads. Make yeah. Anyway, Kent, awesome. Book Hermit, always love to have you. You're awesome. He says corruption already unites the left and right. They both take money from the same elite.
I mean, they're true. That person's not wrong. I want to unite them in a paradigm shift against it, but that person's absolutely correct. Which is unfortunate. But actually, I want to correct that. It's actually not quite true because it unites the duopoly. Technically, the Democrats are the right. The brilliance of Bill Clinton is he turned the Democrats into Republicans and made the Republicans crazy. Right, pushed them so far right they were crazy. That's from Chris Hedges.
Yeah. Well, people are crazy.
Oh, that's all. Well,
Sorry,
hey,
I got distracted by
you're fine.
Andre's comment. Andre, I'm not ever going to support a gun grabbing progressive. What? What?
I'm against combat weapons. If you are pro
I
combat
think
weapon, I'd
he's
be
like,
interested in hearing your argument. But
I
I
think he's
don't.
more
I
like
still don't
super
see any
right wing.
reason.
He doesn't want progressives to have guns, but the right wing should have guns and progressives shouldn't have guns. I don't know. I'm just guessing. It's like
Sure,
he doesn't want progressives to have guns because
I'm interested in hearing. Again, I like my ideas to be challenged to make sure that they're
oh
strong.
yeah.
I like to
Well,
steel
Andre
man other
actually
people
came
too.
on. He will come on. He's brave enough to come on the channel and talk. He's really awesome though. I mean, Andre, he has he takes care of a possum that comes into his house and eats. Really
I
cool.
mean, if we could make sure that possums are healthy and proliferate across the land, we could potentially wipe out ticks and a lot of tick-borne diseases. So, possums are gross looking, but they
Oh,
provide
I
a
think
very
they're cute as
necessary
hell.
barrier.
I think they're really cute actually.
There's a meme with Brett Kavanaugh making these possum faces. It's amazing. There's three of him and three of a possum. I've rarely laughed so hard at a meme. It was amazing. Loved it. So
Okay, I
possum
gotta
Jesse Brett
see that.
Kavanaugh.
All right. All right, Basil was here. Let's see. Trying to just make sure I said hello to Lightning Rod was here. I missed him. Pulp hemp, nut trees. That's cool. You know, hemp is good. Hemp is really awesome for so
Hemp is
many.
great. I actually would love to see Utah transition away from alfalfa and 100% go to hemp. There's definitely some
Can
learning
horses
curves
eat
there.
hemp? Can horses eat that?
I don't know about. I'd like to a bit more. I know it
We're selling all our alfalfa to
provides
China.
and but it's also used to. Well, the reason why I don't want alfalfa here in Utah is we're the second driest state in the nation, and
Yes, we
alfalfa
are.
you have to have standing water there. It is such a wasteful such a wasteful crop to have in the second driest nation in the station in the
I can't disagree with
second
you.
driest state in the nation. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. However, I got to find a way to feed my horses. I'd
Sure,
rather have
maybe we can
pastures.
import it somewhere else where it's wetter, right? Let's get trade deal. Let's see where it can
No
be grown
trade,
somewhere
no
else where it's more
trade. We need a.
reasonable.
There was a way we could survive here. We just
I'm
need fewer people.
interstate. I'd like to. I'm wholly okay with interstate trade. I'd like to localize
Okay,
as much as we can
I
to
would like to get
to
at least rid of the like, multinational trade. Like, let's just keep it in our country and start there. That would be good for me. I would be happy with that. Hemp was animal feed, Kent Dill says. I would like to know if it's okay for horses.
I mean, I would. It's such a. It's shown to. I mean, cure cancer, and it's shown to be nutritionally dense. Again, proteins and fatty
Yeah, I'm really
acids.
interested.
So I wouldn't be surprised, though I don't know enough about it to again say if hemp itself or like how that works out. I don't want to sound like a dummy and say something
I
definitive.
know, but I'm gonna find out. Josh can
Yeah,
contact me if he
that's
wants
awesome.
alternatives to alfalfa for Utah using less water. Are you
Oh
familiar with Snork Y2K? It's Mitchell. He's awesome. Um,
no, interesting.
um,
Yeah.
uh, Snork, ah, Mitchell, email me. I know you have my email, damn it. It's my name, and I will email you Josh's information. So
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Let's connect. That'd be great.
or I can, yeah, either way, just email me so I have
Okay.
it. But we got to get out of here.
Yep.
Um, do horses like broccoli? Yeah, horses like all kinds of things. I googled it. It seems to have a lot of benefits for horses. Nice.
What? Nice. That's awesome. All
Yeah,
right.
just like
Well, hey,
sweet.
thank you so much for
Yay.
your digital hospitality. Everyone who
You're
chimed
welcome.
in, thanks so much. I really
I
appreciate you
do.
being involved enough to be intellectually curious to check me out. And again, JoshuaForChange.com. And my book, Gaming Higher, Gaiming. It's play on words. Very class conscious, kind of different essays, and I think they'll play with ideas and show how not that I'm recommending playing video games, but if you do play video games, there's very real skills you have built and utilize them for good.
Oh, Kelly Lane. Kelly Lane, you come in right at the end. Okay.
Oh, Kelly, I love Kelly. She's awesome.
I
I'm setting up
know.
to talk to her later. She
Yes,
or
awesome. I
later date.
I told Oz that you need to talk to Kelly Lane because she's great at interviewing candidates, certainly way better than I am.
Yeah,
So
Kelly's great.
yes,
She
that'll be
invited me from a very
fabulous.
early time in my activism and has
That's awesome.
provided a very great structure and connected me with people like uh, formerly Peter Douche, Pat Coate, that guy. I love that
Nice.
guy so much.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah,
I like
yeah,
Peter Duke. And but Kelly Lane is one of my very, very, very favorite people. So that's really cool that she popped in. Yeah,
we
you
love
missed
you, Kelly.
most of it. You'll have to go back and watch because it gets kind
We're
of
fanboys, Kelly. Look at us.
yeah, total fans.
Yeah,
Namaste Basil. It just falls into it. Okay. Kelly the
that's
Fast
funny.
Lane Bookerman. Okay, you guys. All right.
All
Thank you
right.
so much. You can, Josh, you can stick around for 1 second and we're going
Okay.
to do our little thing, our little endy thing. And love you guys so much. Say goodnight to everybody. And yeah, just look him up and support him because he's pretty awesome. I guess we're done, right?